former captain, United States Marine Corps, former CIA Special Operations, and then I got out in '96 and began the Association for the Recovery of Children, which is a nonprofit organization of former intelligence, military, and law enforcement officers that are dedicated to the recovery of missing and exploited American children. And then on the side, in order to pay bills, we do extractions out of weird places like the Congo for businessmen who you tell don't go there, but they go there anyway, you know? And then that's men. That's what guys do, right? And so and then of course, I was blessed to be on a TV show called The Blacklist because with NBC, that was also another great opening by God in order to have the flexibility to actually still go out and rescue kids and pay my mortgage. And we can talk about all that stuff later, but really, me being here isn't about me. Me being here is really about you. It's about you. And that's kind of what I want to talk about a little bit today. And then if you want to talk about the other things later, we can. What was your name? I met you earlier, right there. What is it? Colin said, hey, by the way, he said, I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit. He said, you know, when you were doing The Blacklist, he goes, how do you kind of prepare to get into the role of doing this? I said, no, I do that for a living. I said, you know, so kind of easy to do on set. So my acting career really, some of it wasn't really acting, but today this is really about, as Wes said, is about us. It's about a band of brothers, and I've had the opportunity to be around many, many bands of brothers, especially in special operations, where you're with groups of men that you depend on them for your welfare and your life under some of the worst conditions. How many people here are veterans? Thank you for your service. I appreciate that. So for everybody else that was not a veteran, you actually are a veteran. And you actually are a warrior for at least this country and for your families. And you need to, if you're not seeing yourself as that, you need to see yourself as that. And if you can't see yourself as that, then hopefully by the end of the day, you'll understand what I mean by that. You know, and hopefully the words that I share with you today will help you better place yourself in a position as not only a warrior, but a man for your family and for your country and for your community. We live in a time where you're told that it's not okay to be a man. And we live in a country where sometimes we don't even know what that really means. If you were unfortunate enough not to grow up with, and this happens for many of us, a father that set an example for you of what manhood was all about, then it's kind of a journey for you, and it's a tough journey. And it's a confusing journey because you don't know what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to act, how you're supposed to dress, where your confidence is supposed to come from. And so you struggle all along your whole journey to become a man, so to speak. So I'm here to tell you that manhood isn't based on what you think you're supposed to be as a man. It's based on what God chooses to tell you how men should act. So I want to talk to you a little bit about, let's see, the point of your existence. Let's make sure I get this clicker thing going well. All right, Nick, what do I do here, buddy? There you go. That's what men do. They ask other men for help. All right, let's see. Should I just be clicking things?
Yeah, you should hit the big play button.
The big one?
No.
No, oh, there we go. All right. Nick, did you see a thing on there where you can play this?
I don't know that I can play the clip.
It should be a little, there we go. I want you guys to watch this for a second.
No, Captain. That's when they die! I'm these Shield boys! Remember this day, man. It will be yours for all time. Spartans! Lay down your weapons! Persia! Come and get them! Hold! Give them nothing, but take from them everything! Today! There's the best you can do!
So for centuries, bands of brothers have stood together under the worst conditions that you can even imagine. The point of this is not that war is a good thing. The point is that bands of brothers stand together under the worst conditions that are offered in this world. Fearless, together, supporting, strategically, being there for each other. There are probably hundreds of different films that can portray this. But you need to keep in mind, particularly in the time where we are in our country together, that if you do not band together, you will be left out in the middle of the battlefield all by yourself. So what is the point of your existence? I want you to think about that. There's only two types of people in this world. There are followers and there are leaders. That's it. That's it. And if you want to be a follower, then you absolutely do nothing but follow. You have people tell you who you are, what you need to do, and when you need to do it. If you choose to be a leader and make a difference in the world, then there's a few things that you probably need to know that may have never been presented to you. When I received the Intelligence Commendation Medal from the CIA, it was in recognition of highly commendable service in support of a major United States foreign policy initiative, and my service was performed in an exceptionally professional manner under very arduous and also dangerous conditions. My dedication and initiative and hard work contributed significantly to the overall mission accomplishment. I want you to pay attention to that. Initiative, hard work contributed significantly to the overall mission. As you should look at life, as your overall mission, whatever it is you have to accomplish in this life, and you should do it with great dedication and great initiative. All of that required leadership and an understanding that the mission has to be bigger than the person. So for the next hour or so, hopefully only an hour, we're going to take a look through the lens of wisdom from a band of brothers, my band of brothers, who took risks while others were playing it safe. And maybe today allow me to teach you a unique leadership style that so very often is only received by the special operations and special warfare community, and methods of what we call critical thinking that has made a difference in both life and death. So most of you rarely have the opportunity to obtain the leadership skill set needed to face the challenges of what life can throw at you. And that's why it becomes so frustrating. So my goal today is to inspire you to take your rightful place and to lead your country, to lead your businesses and your families to some kind of successful outcome, to push you one step closer of being the warrior God expects you to be within your band of brothers that are sitting here today. There's a reason why all of you have chosen to be here today. And hopefully, does everybody know everybody in here? Yes? No? Okay, you should by the end of the day. Before you leave here, each of you should know each of you. Make sense? So I'm not here to show you how to fulfill a position of prominence, but positions of obedience and responsibility, integrity, and perseverance. So, let's get started. First thing you got to know is that the mission must be bigger than you. Always. If you wish to be great, commit to something greater than yourself. Whatever it is you intend to be good at, it must have such a priority in your life that you will stop at nothing to achieve it, just short of anything illegal, that is, of course. It's got to be more than just an idea or a nice thing to do. It's got to be a calling. And you're going to know the difference because in your heart there will be this small, still voice that will tell you that you're the only one that can do this thing if it's to be done right. That's it. You won't wait for somebody else to do it. All arrogance aside, it's simply a gnawing at your soul that won't go away, and that what you're about to accomplish will be accomplished at all cost, even at the expense of your own comfort, and in an extreme case, at the expense of your own life. And in that process, you will face obstacles. For the untrained mind, the obstacle becomes a hardship. But for the trained mind, the obstacle is simply something to overcome. That's it. Second, you must have mission focus. If you can focus on the mission, the focus will not be on yourself or on your comfort. your challenges, your disadvantage, and the sounds and smells of defeat that so often blanket the world that we're working in. How many people remember a book, and it was actually a movie called Lone Survivor? Anybody see that? Right. That was about Marcus Luttrell. And he was on a mission involving the Taliban in Afghanistan when he and his team actually encountered, as many of you remember, overwhelming odds. And it resulted in the death of a number of members of his SEAL team. But despite multiple through and through gunshot wounds, compound fractures in his legs, broken back, head trauma, and I believe almost biting his tongue in half, Marcus crawled some 7 miles through the mountains and re-engaged the enemy along the way until he was given aid by some local villagers. Now, what isn't described in the book, or in the movie for that matter, is Marcus's specific strategy for accomplishing that task of his 7-mile crawl. It was a mindset acquired by most of us in the special operations community. Marcus, in pain and without real use of his legs, took an insurmountable task like crawling 7 miles and made it into a doable mission by breaking it up into manageable steps. On his journey, he'd reach ahead of him, he'd take his knife, and he'd draw a line in the dirt. And then he'd pull his body over that line and then look back, and once his feet had crossed it, he would repeat that. He'd draw another line in the dirt with his knife, and he would just get past that. He focused on the mission and getting to safety and surviving all of that rather than his very uncomfortable conditions. I suspect that he really didn't focus on what he couldn't do, but what he had to do. My father always said, that's a good rule in life to manage. I do what I have to do before I can do what I want to do. And I'm sure he probably wanted to give up many, many times. Third, it's not getting from point A to point B in life that counts, but what you do between those 2 points when it all goes upside down. What are your emergency procedures? If you think this way through life, life will be easier for you. You'll have a better strategy, a better plan. We know what that's like. Have you ever just mindlessly gone throughout a day and then something catches you off guard and you didn't prepare for it? For example, when you drive in your car, do you put your seatbelt on? Of course you do. Do you put it on because you're afraid that you're going to get in an accident that day? No, you don't even think about it. You just put it on. But what happens if you do get in an accident between point A and point B? You're probably going to survive, right? So you planned for what would go upside down between those 2 points. And this is what warriors think about constantly. What do I do between point A and point B? This is an operation that I was on. The guy in the white shirt is actually on my team now at the Association for the Recovery of Children. His name is Thad Turner. A lot of the other gentlemen are not alive any longer. But this was an operation which I can't go into great detail about, particularly the specifics of who the target was. But on a given day, I launched this SEAL team to a target. And of course, being SEALs, they had to go to the target underwater, of course. Now, do we have any former Navy guys here? Any former SEALs? Any swimmers? Combat swimmers? Okay, so there's a thing when you're underwater. It's called a compass board. And what happens is you follow this compass. There's a compass that sits on a board. It kind of rotates, kind of like a gyro-stabilized kind of compass. And this is what you follow to your target. Now, when you're launching a team at night, the water is black. You see about this far in front of your face. And this was a target that had to be acquired, that's a good word for it, in order to prevent the United States from coming under nuclear attack. So we launched the team right on target, and unbeknownst to myself, because I launched them from the vessel, Halfway there, the compass board fell apart. Now, when I say this was a critical mission, this is what I mean. If that target had not been acquired, there is a good chance that none of us would be in this room today, nor would your families, nor would half the United States of America. So now, one of the biggest missions of our life, and the compass board falls apart in pitch black water. Thad managed to pull out of a bag extra parts and put the compass board back together in under 10 minutes, under the water, totally blind, reacquire the target, and successfully tag the target. Something went wrong between point A and point B. Seriously, how does a compass board fall apart? We had been through everything. Every screw had been tightened. I mean, you know, the draggers were fitted and refitted. I mean, everything meticulously inspected, and in uncontrollable circumstances took place, and the fate of the nation rested in a compass board. But he did it because he was prepared for something that might go wrong between point A and point B. Four, find the value in who you are, not what you do. Gentlemen, one of the problems we have with men in America today is everybody wants to find their value in what they do. The very first time someone meets me, most of the time, when they don't know anything about me and other parts, they go, "So what do you do?" First time I went out on a date in California, "What do you do? What do you drive? Where do you live?" Find your value in who you are, not what you do. At the end of the day, most people won't care or remember the good deeds that you and I have done unless they're written in history books. But they will remember your character and how you treated them in accomplishing those deeds, or what type of courage you displayed, or the moral compass that you used to be fair and compassionate and wise. Well, you might have a few medals for your downrange time to show how big your battles were, but honestly, who can tell you what those medals stand for if they're a civilian? And they might think you look all cool and spit and polished, but at the end of the day, they don't size you up on what you did. They weren't there at that battle. They size you up on who you are standing in front of them at that moment. And you put all of us in civilian attire, we all look like the same guy. So what comes out of your mouth needs to be polished, and it better be presented in a way that no matter who you speak to, they get the sense that you can lead them to victory. Just like in that movie that you just saw. Those Spartans followed their leader because what came out of his mouth led them to victory. And everything you do in life, whether it's directing your family or your business or whatever it may be, has to lead to a victorious ending. Everything. When you get in your car and you leave here today and you go back home, when you get home, that was a victorious ending. When you run your business and you're trying to make $500,000 for the year in profit, if you make it, that was a victorious ending. If you visit someone in a hospital that would never be visited by anybody else, that doesn't even have family because they're sitting there dying of cancer, and you make their day, that was a victorious ending. The little things in life, everything you do has to have a victorious ending, because if it does not, you are losing the battle in everything you do. And you'll hear me say this later. I believe the way you do anything is the way you will do everything in this life. So there you have it. 4 really good things to think about when it comes to becoming a good leader. But none of that is good unless you're willing to serve the very people you're leading to victory. And in order to develop a servant's attitude, you must first be willing to surrender things that get in your way from becoming a leader. But wait, what's all this surrender stuff, Boz? I'm trying to become a leader. You just talked to me about becoming a leader, to win the battles of everything in life, and you want me to start surrendering things? I haven't even gotten on the battlefield yet. You guys probably think I'm a little crazy, and that doesn't make sense to most of you. But I will tell you, after 65 years on this planet, the one thing I've learned in this life, excuse my French, is sometimes we get taught ass backwards. So what stuff is getting in the way of you becoming a great leader? You don't hold on to possessions, trust me. They hold on to you. What stuff is distracting you or making you believe that you have so much to do that you don't have time to become a great leader? I don't have time to do greater things, you say. Let me tell you something, you don't have time not to do greater things, because if you do not, who will? We're deceived in thinking a lot of things are essential when they're not. And if you think somebody else is going to step up to the plate and be the better man, you're sadly mistaken. For such a time as this, you were born. If it were not the case, you wouldn't be here. I was telling Wes last night, sometimes when I take my teams and we're down range and people are firing on us, I always say, well, here we are. And they look at me like, and what's next? It's like, you'll find out. Here's an example. It's really interesting. There was a group asked to invent a gadget that would shoot a raisin across the room. And they were given these plastic spoons and these rubber bands and these wood tongue depressors and scissors and papers and cans and glue and cardboard and all sorts of supplies. And whoever could come up with the gadget to accomplish the task would win. So all the big engineer types and others spent a good hour digging into the task, coming up with all sorts of complicated things. Things that had to be held down by the rest of the team in order to fire the raisin across the room. Other things that had a ton of moving parts, catapults of every odd design that you could think of. And at the end of the exercise, the instructor looked at all the energy that had been wasted and said, here, this is a whole lot simpler. And all you really needed to do was this, as he held up the plastic spoon, put a raisin on it, and just flipped it. It was simple and it was effective. You see, everyone was so distracted by all the stuff on the table that it got in the way of doing the very smart and very simple thing. So again, ask yourself, what stuff is getting in your way? Is there too much stuff on the table? Is it too distracting for you? In the CIA, they teach us to see with more than our eyes and hear with more than our ears. It's the mark of a good man. So what do you need to do in order to surrender, in order to get where you need to get to become a good leader? There's another example of a pastor, and I think Pastor Wes and many of you could probably relate to this. They were actually in Egypt, and the government was falling apart. And everything was happening. There was rioting in the streets and all kinds of stuff. And they received a phone call at the hotel letting them know that they were going to be evacuated along with other foreigners at the airport the next day, but it was very unpredictable. In fact, they didn't even know what kind of airplane they were going to go out on, and really, they didn't even know if they were going to have an airplane to get out on. And no one knew what the conditions were going to be. So they were advised to bring one suitcase. So they actually started unpacking the other 5 or 6 suitcases for the 14-day trip and trying to get everything into one suitcase. Kind of like when the house is on fire and you're trying to figure out what you really need to take out of there. And the next day, they did manage to get to the airport. And when they got to the airport, they saw a lot of other people there that had all of their luggage. They had all showed up at the airport, and those people intended to kind of unload what they had to unload at the airport and then get on the plane. But as it would turn out, there was a normal plane there, and everything was great, and most of those people got on with their luggage, except for the pastor and his family, who basically left everything back in the hotel and got on with one suitcase. Now, who knows where the rest of their stuff is right now? It's probably being distributed all over Egypt, of course. But they had to surrender something so they could get where they needed to go. You see, we're sometimes attached to things like degrees and titles and positions that we cannot even see, to the point that we cannot even see what leadership is really all about. So what about us? What about all of us in this room? What do we need to surrender? First thing you need to surrender is your desire for prestige. Your desire for prestige. Prestige, the definition is widespread respect and admiration felt for someone or something on the basis of perception of their achievements or their quality. There was a pastor who attended seminary, and he knew that once he got his master's and then his doctorate, he'd no longer have to drive the crappy little car that he owned. You know, the one with the Band-Aids on the door and the chip paint and the sun-faded roof that looks like acid rain has hit it every morning. Anybody got a car like that? I had one. The kind that blows smoke out the tailpipe because oil is burning and seagulls have used it as a bombing range every day. I had one of those too because I lived on the beach. So it was an embarrassment to say the least, but it was all he could afford, and it really didn't reflect the status of anyone who had a college degree. He pulled up to the university parking lot and sat there telling God his plans that one day, very soon, he would have a more prestigious car, something that reflected his position as a theologian. And all of a sudden, he hears tick, 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 tick as another crappy car pulls up and parks right next to him. Well, thank you, Lord. At least I'm not the only one that has a crappy car. Someone can share my pain. And as he looked over, who do you think it was? It was the head of the theology department. Oh, great. Now I can aspire to get my doctorate and have a much better crappy car. You see, the guy in the other car could care less about what he was driving because it wasn't about prestige. He was comfortable in who he was, and he was a leader in his own right. Sometimes we think we're holding on to possessions, like I said, but in reality, they're holding on to us. We're deceived in thinking a lot of things are essential, as I said earlier, but guess what? They're not. So sometimes becoming a great warrior, a great man in life, is taking count of all the stuff you have and only taking the things that are essential, and not really caring what people think about the car you drive, the clothes you wear, what you look like on the outside, but it's what you are on the inside that matters. So what else do we need to surrender? Well, we need to surrender control. Control over our wants and our desires and our plan of attack and our expectations and our attitude, or the fact that I'm the boss and that's good enough for you to follow me. Let me tell you something, boss or not, you get people to respect you, which means trusting you over a period of time. It's shown that you can be respected and trusted, and they will follow you around the world under the worst conditions and accomplish the greatest missions and die for you if they have to. So how do you surrender control? Well, here's an example. I don't think we probably have anybody from Missouri that carries guns, right? No. So when you're at the firing range, if you allow the weapon to do what it's designed to do, which is put a round on target, will it do that? Of course it will. But if you feel like you need to control the weapon and the outcome by putting the death grip on that pistol or that long gun, and it's so tight that you can't even maneuver the weapon or that everything about your grip is shaking the weapon, you think you're going to hit the target? Most of the time, not. For those who have never fired a weapon, let me use an example of a car. If you have a death grip on the steering wheel, how well can you drive the car? Not very well, right? Remember when you first got your license and you were nervous and you just held the wheel like this the whole time? And your mom or dad said, easy, let it go, let it do its thing. But you had so much control. You felt like you needed to control that big old monster of a car. Well, I didn't because I had a Volkswagen. It was a little car. But you know what I mean. I think you understand my point. Let the car do what it was designed to do and surrender control. Be the one with the car, feel the car, learn the car, understand the car. Same thing with your weapon. Now that sounds a little Zen-like. You see, the more authority you're given, the more surrender you need. And the more you understand the people underneath your leadership, the way they're built and their capabilities, and allow them to do what they're designed to do, you might find out that the mission will get accomplished. Keep in mind that every weapon isn't designed for long range, correct? Neither are all people. If you need a different weapon, then you get a different weapon. And if you need different people, then you get different people for the task at hand. Only you can determine as a leader what you need in order to accomplish the mission. But if you think that everybody in your life, all your children and your wife and your business associates and all the people you contact are all designed to do the same thing, you are sadly mistaken. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't combine all those attributes, as we saw in the movie up here, with these war fighters to accomplish a mission and bring greatness and victory. You can do that. But don't expect everybody to think alike. Don't expect everybody to be alike or to sound alike. And sometimes we make that mistake because I'm in control. This is my business. This is my family. This is my church. This is what it is. And you will do it the way I wanted you to do it because this is the outcome that I perceive. And this is how we're going to get it done. And it doesn't always work that way. I think if you look back at your life, how many people can honestly here, and that's what men should be, honest, say, hey, guess what? It didn't actually work out the way I wanted it to or thought it should be. Anybody ever have that happen? Of course. Get used to it. It's life. All right, what else do we need to surrender? We need to surrender our status. Status is the relative social, professional, or other standing of someone. That's what it means. What good is it to be a doctor if you're an incompetent surgeon? What good is it to be a general if you cannot tactically and strategically maneuver your army so that you have an advantage over the enemy? Or what good is it to be a well-known university professor if the method that you're using to teach your students is not educating them? And what good is it to be the head of an NFL football team if you're not winning games or at least giving the competition a run for the money? You can call yourself whatever you want, and you can market yourself as a professional and lean into the social status thinking it's enough to accomplish the mission, but it is not. Simply put, remember this, what isn't a name? Who cares? You can be called anything, but if you cannot accomplish the mission, if you cannot perform, what good is it? Almost every one of those team guys that you saw on that mission, on that slide right there, if you were to walk up them on the street today, you would never know who they are because they don't tell their story. You would never know what they did to save our lives. Some people call it humility. I think it's a good thing. If I wasn't all over Google now because of my publicist or whatever it is, none of you would know anything about my history. And actually, many of you may think you know me, but you'll never hear a war story out of me. And you will never know what I did, where I went, nor will you know what our teams have done or what they did. I remember sitting with a buddy of mine and being introduced to, we'll just call him Farmer John. Late 80s. Whole conversation, the whole day, was farming. That was it, just farming. Walked away from there. 3 days later, I got to find out who that guy was. World War II, had done things that I probably would never do in my life. Had saved lives, had been in hand-to-hand combat. I mean, just some of the most extraordinary things. Had successfully raised a family. Had like 32 grand and great-grandchildren. Had helped people with businesses. Had done, I mean, just on and on and on and on and on. And even closer to home is my own story about my own father, who, end of Korea, Vietnam, Special Forces, Green Beret, never told a war story. And then one day when he finally retired, my mother hands me this box. Actually, it's a couple boxes. And I'm down at his office, and I'm opening the boxes up, and my mother says, I want you to put these things on your dad's wall. Silver stars, bronze stars, Thai command badge. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And I look at my dad, and I said, how come you never said anything about this? He said, nothing to say. He said, I'm just doing my job. I would have never, ever known about the man who raised me and what he had been through. And even beyond that, I'm walking in the halls of the CIA one day, and Harry Pugh comes up to me, CIA Special Operations guy with one of those big old nasty British mustaches with the yellow stain from the food that he doesn't wipe off. You ever seen that before? The guy you definitely don't want to go to dinner with. And I did in Zaire, and he ate my food when I went to the bathroom. And Harry goes, hey, I served with your dad in Vietnam. And I went, I don't think so. I said, my dad was an Army guy. And he just smiled and walked away. 20 years later, I find out that my father was working for the CIA in Laos and the things that he had done. 20 years later, I find out that my father, on a given evening, and I'm finding this out from other people, gave the one command that many of us as warfighters in those days of conventional warfare would never want to hear, and that is simply, fix bayonets, as they came through the wire. 20-some years later, I find out that my father is on a team with an FBI, a buddy of mine, the FBI's father, and guess who they go get in Bolivia? Che. All of these things I have to find out from other people. Why? Because it wasn't about prestige. It wasn't about a story. So just as that, in this room right here, there are many of you that have had the opportunity to grow, do amazing things that you may never talk about. Or if you do, it will be in private or in silence to some degree. But the reason I tell you this is that you need to look around at this band of brothers here. And you need to ask yourself, I wonder what that guy did. I wonder what his life is like. I need to talk to that guy. Let me find out what he's all about. You might find out collectively that you have enough within this band of brothers to actually become victorious in anything you do in your region, St. Louis, and the United States. To bring victory. We need to surrender our fear of failure. Gentlemen, stay in the saddle. If you aren't falling off every now and then quite frankly, you're not riding tough enough horses. And if you feel like your life is churning in the process, then guess what? It probably is. Sometimes not a day of rest or an hour of sleep or a vacation to take because you have so much responsibility and it doesn't always go right. But guess what? That's okay. You guys ever seen those cement mixer trucks? And it's kind of like driving down the road and it's just churning, right? Why is it doing that? Why? So the cement doesn't harden, right? Exactly. So it didn't become stagnant, right? So if you're stagnant, then there's the potential of your heart solidifying, and it will take a jackhammer to break it up, especially if you pour it into the wrong thing. For example, you poured a sidewalk, instead you wanted to pour a memorial. So ask yourself, what are you poured into? What did you pour yourself into in this life? We need to surrender our arrogance. Let us not think too highly of ourselves, but let us think higher of those who came before us. For it is they who taught us everything we know. When you start focusing on your own problems, your own challenges, stop and think of all of those that came before us from the beginning of this country to your great-grandfather or your grandfather or whoever grew up during the Depression or World War I or World War II. Wes and I were driving here this morning, and I was looking out over the horizon. I said, just think, you remember those days when people would get up and they were getting ready to go into battle, and they were getting their orders, and it was just still dark and cold? I mean, look, I live in Colorado. I can go out in a T-shirt in 24-degree weather. You guys are at this butt-ugly, cold, backbiting cold here in Missouri. You want to get up that early in the morning and march off to battle or whatever it may be? Look at the people that founded the country that did not have the conveniences that we have. So most of the time when we focus on how bad our life is, stop and think about the people that came before us and how bad they really had it. Realize sometimes we don't have it that bad. Okay? Now, that's not for everybody. Look, there are people that live in conditions in our country where they don't have a heater to stay warm. They don't have a blanket. Some of them are on the streets. These are the people that good leaders go out and help. Don't forget that. We need to surrender our individuality. When you consider humanity, our humanity, and the compassion it takes to make this world a better place, I want you to remember something. We are all just walking each other home. That's it. You need to surrender your stiffness. When challenges arise in what appears to be an uphill battle, learn to live life different in a better way. It's been my experience, as I told you earlier, and how you do anything is how you will do everything. You don't make your bed in the morning. You don't take out your trash. You set a bad example for your kids, your family, your businesses. You cut corners. You compromise. You don't give it 100%. You do that on one thing, you will do it on everything. And that mark will be on you, and people will be able to tell. When we bring people into the special operations community, there are no corners cut. There are no compromises on any level. Whether it's telling the truth, whether it's how you take care of your weapon, whether it's how you know how to read a compass, we cut no corners because our life depends on it. So how we do everything or anything is how we will do everything. You need to surrender our doubt. Look, if you don't have what it takes to believe in who God created you to be, then do this. Just believe in God. That's it. If you don't have enough confidence in yourself, I'm not saying you're going to walk out of here and now you guys are all going to become the next best band of brothers that's going to protect the nation. But if you don't have what it takes right now to believe in who God has created you to be, just believe in God. He'll be your strength. Be the type of person that lets God move through you. Otherwise, I promise you this, He will move around you. There's three things needed in order for a person to bring about change: accomplish a task, or influence creativity. First, he or she must have talent. You have to have talent. Second, he or she must be in the right environment, surrounded by the right forces of people and opportunities. You have to have that. And third, he or she must have the will to do so. You cannot have one without the other in order to be successful. It doesn't work. Gentlemen, we need to surrender our age. When you're older, be wiser, stand further, and pull the trigger softer. That's why snipers live a long time. I want you to live on the razor's edge, and it'll be sharper, and it can cut deeper. But if you know how to shave well, you'll be fine. I live in the Rocky Mountains. I take a lot of young men out. I'm 65 years old. Most of them are in their 20s. They cannot keep up with me. If I can do it, you can do it. Why? Am I trying to prove something? I'm setting the example of leadership. There is nothing written in any book in America that says when you're 100, you can't climb mountains, or you can't get on a skateboard, or you can't go to the firing range. There's nothing. We limit ourselves because we think, oh, I'm getting older. Think about it. Who put the limitation on you? If you look at a lot of our war fighters that come back now, that have been hit by IEDs, been burned up, been shot up, been crippled, and these guys are still on their prosthesis, and they're out there running 6, 7, 8, 10 miles, still climbing. If they can do it, you can do it. We need to surrender our sense of entitlement. There's a war between entitlement and enlightenment. And those who seek entitlement do all they can to be recognized, while those who seek enlightenment simply live life as who they are. So now that you've surrendered all the stuff that would prevent you from becoming a great leader, I want you to step up to the plate and move forward with kind of these final words. Know your people. That's really important. Who are your people? These are your people. Your family are your people. The people at your business are your people. They're under your leadership. And I remember I got a phone call and somebody said, the lady on the phone said, "Hey, is this Bazzel?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Are you 65? I said, "Yes." She said, "Do you live at 1011 Warrior Street?" I said, "Yes." She goes, "Are you married to Julie Baz?" I went, "No." She goes, "Do you work at Verizon Wireless?" I went, "No." I suddenly stopped her on the phone and I said, "Ma'am, you know me, but you don't really know me." To which I nicely said goodbye and hung up the phone. You see, there are leaders that know of their people, but they really don't know their people. Their issues, their contributions, their abilities, their potential, their ideas, and the list goes on and on and on. Honor your people with the way you lead them, and in such a way to know them and take interest in them. It's really important. It'll be more than the world does around them. They need to be seen for who they are, who they really are, and not for who you think they are. Anybody here have family and friends and you see them for who they are but not for really who they are? Anybody have that? Do you really know them? Do you really get involved? You need to be seen for who they really are, not who you think they are. And we must hold ourselves accountable. Now, if we intend to be excellent leaders, then excellence requires taking a risk. And that risk being the motivation to first look at ourselves every day. The hard facts of whether we're a good leader or we're a bad leader. We don't do enough of that. We don't get up every morning and every night and stand in the mirror and really look at ourselves and say, did I give 100%? What kind of leader am I? Am I good today? Am I bad today? Do I need to correct something in my life? And I found the greatest leaders in my life to be warriors. And if you accept the words I give you today, people will follow you to the ends of the earth and do what's required of them. A warrior's strength is measured simply in this, in the size of your heart. You show love and honor and respect. You stand and fight in the face of adversity for the ones you love. You're their voice, and you're their shield. You lead by example, always remembering who you are. And if you do this, I promise you, you will create a life that feels good on the inside, not just one that looks great on the outside. Now, I want you to develop a superior attitude. Now, you might be thinking this is a first sign of arrogance, but it's not in my case. So my definition of superior might surprise you. The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than facts. It is more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think, say, or do. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company, a school, or a home. The remarkable thing is we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we'll embrace for the day. We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way, and we cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is plan on the one thing we have, and that is our superior attitude. I am convinced that life is 10% of what happens to me and 90% of how I react to it. A superior attitude will produce superior results. And in looking for results, remember, focus on the process of leadership, not the results, and you'll learn it correctly to obtain the results. In other words, the results will follow. If you do it any other way, chances are you'll never get it right, and you'll spend unnecessary time and energy trying to learn all the steps. I've been studying Aikido for probably 27, 28 years now. I am by no means anywhere near where I will probably be the day I die. But it is something that I practice constantly over and over and over just to get the steps down. Constantly, over and over and over. Sometimes I get it right, sometimes I get it wrong. But when you get it right and it sticks with you, the results are there, and you never forget it. And then guess what happens? You start doing things naturally, without thinking. And this is where you want to be as a good leader and a good man. You want to get to the point that the habits you develop, what you've trained to do, start becoming naturally, so you don't even have to think about it. It could take a lifetime. For some, we learn some things quicker than we do other things, depending on the examples that were set for us, depending on the challenges that we eventually overcome. But guess what? If it takes you 90 years, then be okay with 90 years. If you don't get it right the first time or the second time, keep doing it. Keep practicing. Eventually, it'll start coming naturally to you. Not all of it. It will never be that successful until we leave this earth, I'm sure. We all make mistakes. We admit our mistakes. It's not how many times you fall down, it's how many times you get up that counts. Make sense? And if it doesn't end up the way you anticipated, then gentlemen, do not be upset by the results you didn't get with the work you didn't do. Nothing is free in this world. Freedom is not free in this world. Absolutely nothing. If you don't put the work behind it, don't expect to have good results. Real growth does not come from the information that you're receiving from me today. It comes from the application of what you have received from me today. So, gentlemen, keep a smile on your face, telling the world that it matters, that life truly matters to you. Make it absolutely evident the way you treat people is a lesson in love. Practice giving, offering up slices of yourself to both man and nature, but in all of it, the most touching angle of you should always be the deep honor you bestow on your family, for how you were molded, and in return, just by your presence and your gifts and your help, that will mold others towards a good life. Honor the day and do so in a fashion that feeds your soul. It's very important. And it's really important to know who you are, and if not, then discover who you are in God. If you don't know this, it is not that God is part of the equation. It is that God is the equation. God does not need your belief or your disbelief in order to exist. We are not greater than Him. If you were, then do me a favor. When God calls you home, say no and remain here. Not happening. God tells us simply by looking at all of nature and the stars that He exists, and that people that cannot even see that are nothing more than fools. And that's true. Don't be a fool. Ask God to reveal Himself to you on a daily basis. God wants a relationship with you. He doesn't want you to just know of Him. Now, if you're going to be a real man and a real leader, then you're not going to ask to fight one dragon. You're going to say, give me all the dragons. Let me fight on every side of my life. Now, there's an advantage to that. You don't have to worry about where you're slinging your sword. You're going to cut something. And if you're going to go out in a blaze of glory in this life, whether it is figuratively speaking or whether it is literally speaking when you are surrounded by the enemy. Get as many of them as you can. Whatever those are in life, whether it is multiple challenges, whether it is multiple diseases, whether it is the freedom of your country, whether it is surrounded by whatever that enemy is for you, just as you saw on the opening clip here. Be outnumbered. Be surrounded. Do not leave this planet as a weakling. Be a leader, be a man, accept the challenges, and be unlike everybody else in the world. That's what men do. That's what warriors do. In the face of all adversity, they fear not. They stand strong. Otherwise, grab your gear and get to the back of the ranks and let somebody else protect you. Let them spill their blood for you, their energy, their time. And don't call yourself a warrior. It comes in many forms and many fashions. And it is not always in Afghanistan. It is not always in Iraq. It is always not in Angola, other places. Sometimes it's right here in Troy. Sometimes it's right here in St. Louis. Sometimes it's right in our own country. And you have no idea what you may be called upon to do in the future, in the state of affairs in a nation. But if you are called, then be brave. How many people remember that movie called Braveheart? Remember Braveheart? Remember when they were going to go up against their first battle and everybody was going to back down because they were outnumbered by the English at that time? Do you remember that scene? It's when Mel Gibson rode his horse back and forth with the blue paint on his face. Do you remember that one thing he said to them? And I'm probably not going to quote it correctly, but he said, yeah, he goes, you can go home. You can run. And basically, when you're laying in your bed and you're dying, he goes, what are you really going to say about yourself as far as honor? That you remained a slave? That you buckled? How will you live with yourself, basically? Or would you rather die on the battlefield today knowing that you protected your families and freedom and you lived a free man? A lot to be said for that. Doing what is right is not always easy, but doing less than what is right is unbearable to the soul if you are a person of conscience. And finally, this band of brothers that I speak in front of today as a nation is challenged with the threat of socialism and corruption like never be seen before. Let us remember, the Constitution is only as good as the people who are willing to defend it against enemies, foreign and domestic. The lifeblood that courses through the veins of patriots is that which ensures the Constitution is a living document to serve as the proclamation of freedom and liberty for each citizen. Otherwise, it is nothing more than words written on paper. For such a time as this, we were all created. We were born ready for the fight, and we intend to honor our forefathers with the way we live our lives and the way we intend to die for our country. Let it not be said that we fainted or feared in the face of tyranny, but that we stood strong and showed the world that we, the people, will not be overcome, oppressed, or denied the right for freedom. Our blood will be mixed with the blood of those who have gone before us in defense of the Constitution and shall not return to the earth void. On this day, let it be known that whether I stand up here alone or others stand with me, the fight will be to the bloody end. We will push through the lines of the enemy, and we will do whatever it takes to make sure this road is never traveled again. To ensure our children never have to fear the loss of freedom that we, the people, have secured for them. We are no more in violation of the law than the men and women who founded our Constitution. For when tyrants turn the nation upside down, it is our duty to right it. It has always been our duty. It is what we bled for, we sacrificed time and our families for, served honorably for, and no tyrant will take that away from us. Hear our voice. We will never let our country fail. And gentlemen, that is the point of your existence. Thank you.
So, gentlemen, again, becoming a warrior, a man of God, is just one step away. What do I mean? It's one step towards Jesus. He doesn't care what your background, like we said before. I think one of the things the enemy, and we have a very real enemy, that'll continually remind us of our past, continually try to keep us from stepping forward into what the Lord wants us to be. Do you guys understand this battle? It's important, and you have the biggest target on your back, being a man who wants to follow after Jesus Christ. Trust me, you got a big target on your back. So here's what I would like to do. Let me say this before I get to what I would like to do. if you're here visiting from another congregation, we welcome you. Might I encourage you to start a Band of Brothers meeting at your church? If you want to know how to do that, I'd be happy to help you get that started. For all of you, most of you guys, I think 90% of you attend Calvary. Of course, we have Band of Brothers on Tuesday morning, 5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. at night, and we got 3 more Tuesdays to go. Coming together, banding together, praying for one another, fellowshipping with one another. It's just so vital for us men to do. But here's what I want to do in closing. Here in just a moment, I'm going to pray, and here's what we're going to do. If you're just saying, you know what a lot of the stuff that Boz shared is really hit home. I want to be a warrior. I want to be one who the Lord will take under his wing and teach me to be a warrior. And you know how you do that? You follow him. Jesus is a warrior. Jesus is the warrior. You look in the book of Joshua, and Joshua's, you know the story around Jericho, and he runs into the captain of the Lord's army. Well, that was a Christophany. That was a pre-incarnation, thank you, of Jesus, and he was there ready to go to war. So you just have to follow him. And the cool thing about Jesus is he's a warrior, but he's also gentle. He's kind. He'll never condemn you. He'll correct you, and he'll say, pick up your sword, it's time to fight. He'll do that, but he's the perfect balance of a man, if you will. So let's all stand to our feet. If I'm going to pray, I'm going to ask Boz to come up here also. I'm going to pray and just ask, hey, if you just feel like, you know what, Lord Jesus, I want to follow you. If that's your heart's cry, and just, Lord, I want to finish this race well. Lord, there's been some things in my past that I've done, or maybe I'm struggling with right now, but I just want to conquer that dragon. I want to swing the sword. I want to be part of a band of brothers. But in order to be a part of that, it's about Jesus. It's about you following him. And he's here right now. Jesus says, I walk amongst the golden lampstands. That's his church. So he's walking, he's here right now. Men, we want to finish well, don't we? We want to do well in this, and I tell you what, it's all about grace. It's all about God accepting us through his son Jesus Christ. So if you want to say this morning, you know what, I want to make a stand right now. I want to say, you know what, before my band of brothers, I want to say I want to become a warrior. And when I have you come up to the front here, I'm going to ask Boz just to say a special blessing over you for a warrior. So if you want to say this morning, I want to be a warrior for Jesus Christ. I want to finish this race well. You make your way up here right now. Don't wait. Just start coming up, guys. No one wants to be there you go. No one wants to be the first one. Come on up. Just want to be a warrior for the Lord. And I tell you what, also, if you're here and you've never accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and you want to do that, it's simple. You place your trust in what Jesus Christ has done for you on a cross 2,000 years ago. You believe he died, rose again for payment for your sin, and you believe that with your heart, you confess it with your mouth, and the scripture says you shall be saved. Guys, this is what it's all about. We're going to be, listen, 50 years from now, except for the really young guys, we're all going to be in heaven. We're going to be around God's throne. And I want to finish this race well. I want to see you there, and I want to look at you in the eye and go, yes, we did it. The Lord was faithful. We finished well, and whatever the dragon the Lord had you slay, yeah, you did it well. That's what I want, gentlemen. Amen. Mr. Boz, would you please stand over these men? And would you please ask just a special blessing and prayer for them, us to continue to be warriors? Yeah.
Father, for such a time as this, you have brought us here. We don't understand everything about you. We don't understand a lot of things. But we know you love us. We know, Father, that there are battles that rage spiritually and physically. Have been before we were even born. And there probably will be, Lord, after we leave this earth. And it is your strength that sustains us. It's your grace that allows us to see another day. The very breath we have, Father, is yours. It is not ours. So I would offer, Father, for these men, as I offer for my own teams every time we go downrange, that you would strengthen them, that you'd make yourself known to them in ways that they have never experienced. That you would grow them into mighty warriors for you, for their families, for their businesses, for our nation. That we teach them how to hold the line, make them smart, make them wise, make them strong, make them examples, Lord, that others wish to be. You have been so gracious and so kind and so forgiving. And thank you for setting the example for us with your strength and your forgiveness and your love. So on this day, Lord, you know the needs of each person here in this room more than I do. But if, Father, if you see me worthy, then I pray special blessing upon all of them, that from this day forward, that you will walk with them, that you will be their guide and their strength, and fashion them into mighty men. No different than you fashioned mighty men throughout history and in the scriptures. And as it would be that thy will be done, I pray this day, Lord, that it is your will, that each of them should walk from here, and that nothing shall be able to defeat them. And these things, Lord, we ask because you are the maker of heaven and earth. Amen.
Let's give the Lord a big old hand clap, guys. Gentlemen, thank you for coming. I want to just stay where you are for just a moment. I want to thank Judy Brown for supplying all that delicious bacon. The gravy and the biscuits were all homemade by Rachel and Pam. So if you see them tomorrow, just give them a big old hug and if you can with a full tummy. But anyways, Nathan, we need some instructions because, gentlemen, we need your help to get rid of these tables and stuff. Nate, give us a shout out.